Hello, everybody from Guangzhou in southern China, in Canton. I've been here at the Imperial Springs Summit convened by the Club de Madrid, discussing the state of global affairs and particularly the role of China in global politics. And there's been an overarching theme, of course, which is the deterioration of the China-US relationship, including during the Biden administration on the trade front, on the diplomatic front. And I made a few points here, and they're the following. There are a number of things we could do to make sure that this competition between these two countries doesn't derail into full-on conflict or doesn't have very negative consequences for the world. And the first is to recognize that this is a fraught relationship and that it will continue to be fraught for the foreseeable future. And this would also lead to building a structured set of dialogues between China and the US. And I think they need to be very frank and honest about this, that they're very severe competitors across a whole range of fields, and this will entail a specific set of dialogues that will need to take place on a consistent and recurrent basis across these two countries. The second element is, I think we need to accept that there will need to be a security architecture built in the Indo Pacific. This doesn't necessarily need to be bad. It might bring stability to the region if that happens. AUKUS, which is the arrangement between the Australians, the Brits, and the Americans on technology transfer for defense and others, might be expanded or hardened. That might be one first sort of dimension of that architecture. The Quad might be another dimension. The function of ASEAN in that space is also a big question. But in the future, if that architecture is built, there'll be more layers of dialogue and of engagement, and there'll be more rationality to policies in the region. And I think that this is very important moving forward. And we lived through this in Europe at the end of the Second World War, and it was for the better in Europe. It actually prevented all-out war in Europe for decades, despite the very severe competition across the Iron Curtain. Three, I think it's important to give a voice to the Global South in global politics, growingly so because of this collision. The Global South countries, Brazil, South Africa, India itself, Mexico, they have very strong views about where the world should be headed. They don't want a world of black and white. They don't want a world of geostrategic competition that looks like a Cold War environment that threatens their development agenda, their trade agenda. So providing a structured platform for the Global South to come into this discussion, I think will be very, very important. Fourth, and this is something China can do, remaining open and engaged with the world would be an important contribution that China makes. And this will entail reopening post-COVID, building a level playing field and a fair economy for other countries to engage with China, which has not been the case for the past few decades. If you talk to European and American businesses doing business here, they will tell you. So this is a new type of re-engagement of China with the rest of the world, and I think this is very important, also diplomatically, culturally. And this is a pending topic because the country shut down during COVID and it hasn't yet fully reopened. And finally, fifth and finally, it's about the multilateral architecture. Sort of rebetting on multilateralism, on the UN, maybe the Summit of the Future process, making sure that China engages in this dialogue will be fundamental. Not a single voice in this conference has played down the importance of the UN, of the SDGs, and of bringing China and the US into these dialogues. So a revamped multilateralism, maybe after the Summit of the Future, the US elections next year and others, would be a very important contribution to strategic stability, to a framework of strategic stability across these two countries. Now, if all of these things were done, we would live in a much more stable world that would allow for international business, for trade, and for others to do significantly better moving forward. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Bye-bye.